Alright. I know I kind of have like a habitual way of starting these videos. Typically I'll say like, okay, or alright, but I don't know. Things that I notice. So I'm kind of gathering my thoughts here and finding my voice, so it'll start off slow most like, and then I'll speed up as time goes on. So I was wanting to make a video about the I already made a video regarding the G breath and guiding people through a 3-sequence cycle G breath. So now what I want to do is take people through what is known as the Z breath or the zeta breath. What we're going to do is we're going to go through 3 cycles of the zeta breath, and well, actually this time we'll do 2 cycles, because for the G breath video we did 3 cycles, so for the zeta breath we're only going to do 2, because then I'm going to vlog and just talk about random stuff. So this isn't necessarily the breathing tech level 2, it's the breathing technology level 1 part 2, because I just want to preface real quick, the Z breath is essentially a backwards G breath, and a G breath is a backwards Z breath. They're like mirrors, you know, and the goal of learning the Z breath is that it's mirrored opposite. The G breath, it relates to the purple chakra, right? Which is the brain chakra. And the Z breath is the root chakra, or the red chakra. So you have the purple brain chakra, G, and you have the red root Z chakra, which is zeta, is the zeta breath. So we're gonna, this time, we're only gonna go through 2 cycles of the Z breath, which, again, you can continue to do as many cycles of either the G or the Z breath as much as you want. The purpose of starting off with these 2 breaths, I feel, again, which I wouldn't know anything about these breath sequences were it not for Corey Love, or Corey Herter, Core Love. He did not create these things. He did not invent them. He merely discovered them, because they are a natural thing that we normally do in life. It's something that's intrinsic to the mathematics of nature. And these breathing codes help us to tap into our brainwave patterns as well as our biorhythmic patterns in order to coordinate certain forms of consciousness and thus affect our energy field. So the zeta breath is its opposite, or the opposite to the G breath, and the goal of practicing both the G breath and the Z breath is, one, you have to, in the beginning, you kind of keep them in perpetual balance, right? You know, for every bit of G you do, you know, you kind of want to counterbalance that with Z and vice versa. But eventually you'll figure out that you are either primarily a G breather, or you are a G, or you're primarily a Z breather and you're a Z, right? And once you find which one your code or your vibration resonates with, then you can primarily hone in on that breath. Some people are, within their genetic code, they're more of a G. You know, they benefit from doing the G breath more, whereas other people, due to their code, they're more aligned with the zeta breath. The G breath produces energy. It increases things. So if you have, you know, for the majority of your life, have had low energy or low processing power, like within your brain or within your body, you can benefit from the G breath. which produces dimethyltryptamine, whereas the Z breath produces adrenaline, which slows down and the body's processes and deletes energy. I don't want to say delete, even though most of us don't really truly know the meaning of that word, because you have replete or relete, and you have delete or deplete, right? And what it does really is it grounds the energy, right? It converts it into an energy that is calming to the body, right? It reduces the amount of processing power and helps you to relax. And I'll bring up more after we go through the guided meditation. So just follow my cue, or I don't even know if that's the right word. Follow my instruction, and we shall go through only 2 cycles of the Z breath, as opposed to 3 for the G breath that we did in the other video. So first, I want you to exhale all the air, all your breath out of your mouth. So exhale all the breath in your lungs out of your mouth. Breathing in through the mouth. Breathing out through your mouth. Breathing in through your nose. Breathing out through your mouth. Breathing in through your nose. And breathing out through your nose. Breathing in through your mouth. And breathing out through your nose. Breathing in through your mouth. And breathing out through your mouth. Breathing in through your nose. And breathing out through your mouth. Breathing in through your nose. And breathing out through your nose. Breathing in through your mouth. And breathing out through your nose. Breathing in through your mouth. And breathing out through your mouth. So I want to encourage everybody that if this is the first video you're watching regarding the breath tech videos that I'm doing, go back and watch the G breath video first, because there were some things that I had forgotten to mention prior to doing the breath. Sorry, got a bubble in my throat. But that is sorry, there's the neighbor's dog in the backyard. We have no fence, and he's trying to get a squirrel that's now high up in the tree. Anyways, so when doing the breath sequences, you want to try and breathe in as deeply as you can and breathe out as deeply as you can. I forgot to mention that prior to doing the breath or the meditation. So go back and watch the G breath video before watching this one. The breaths that we did were all just normal speed breaths, normal depth breaths, but again, this is just showing the sequence. It's essentially a backwards G breath, and again, when you cycle back around to the mouth, the second time, that's the first mouth of the next sequence. So again, go back, watch the G breath video, and then come back and watch this one. So the thing about the G and the Z breath is that the Z breath is it resonates with the color red and infrared light. So it is a primary color, meaning that it is it encodes unity, right, as opposed to duality, and of, say, a secondary color. The secondary refers to the gamma, which creates DMT, which allows energy to grow and to proliferate and to spread out. And so it increases the consciousness, it increases the activity of the brain and the body, etc. And the gamma breath uses ultraviolet light, as opposed to the zeta breath, which uses infrared light. Now, the important thing to remember between these two forms of light is DMT and ultraviolet purple gamma light helps to reconnect neural pathways. It helps us to remember things. It helps us to bring up memory. So if there is a certain memory or a bit of information you don't understand, use the G breath and it'll help to draw that information up for you. That way you can convert it and integrate it into yourself so that it is something that you remember. Whereas infrared light or the zeta light helps to delete memories. It helps to clear them from your conscience or your consciousness so that you don't have to think about them. If you're a person who deals with anxiety and constant overthinking and overanalyzing to the point where, say, you have a problem like insomnia and you can't sleep, or you get anxious in public, or even if you're not in public, or if you have an increased heart rate, and it's troublesome for you, the zeta breath may be more your speed, pun intended. And you'll notice that, say, in the Men in Black movies, when the Men in Black pull out the neuralizer and it flashes that red light and it causes like a memory wipe, that's because intense infrared light has the capacity to sever, or not sever, but to detach the consciousness from certain memories or certain experiences to help you forget. And so it's like the words forgive and forget. You know, the F-O-R refers to the fire, and the fire is consciousness. So in order to forgive, right, you're giving yourself fire, right? And to forget, you're or I'm sorry, I got confused there for a second, but it happens from time to time. You know, you gotta you gotta humble yourself. But essentially, I'm not entirely sure about the etymology. In fact, I never thought about this until now. But zeta is red, which resonates with the earth element. It sort of takes that fire and it grounds it, right? Sort of like how fire will eventually convert other things to ash, or how lava hardens into a stone. So it takes that fire and it grounds it. You know what I mean? Forgive, forget, these words don't necessarily explain the more extended truth of it, but when you do the gamma breath, it increases that fire, right? It increases that consciousness. So in a sense, you're giving yourself fire, but you're also giving others fire. You're spreading that fire. You're spreading that consciousness, that power. And that actually brings me to another interesting point. FYI, I personally am a Z. I have dealt with overactive energy pretty much my whole life, overanalyzing, overthinking, and the adrenaline that is produced within my body through the Z breath helps to calm all that energy down, because it utilizes the adrenaline, and so whenever it's used up, then the state that you're left with is a relaxed state. So the Z breath produces energy at first, but then it calms it, like adrenaline does, whereas dimethyltryptamine relaxes you for a moment, and then the the radial effect, or the ebb and flow, is the return energy, which increases it and makes you more alert. So the forgetting is the process of converting the fire into the earth element, basically freezing the fire, like how obsidian is considered frozen fire, right? That's why some people have called it dragon glass, or dragon stone. But and I guess in a sense that get in the word forget is sort of like that process of grounding the fire. You know what I mean? There's a lot about etymology that we don't know about, but the interesting thing is that it's a rabbit hole that leads you down this path of being able to understand the deeper meanings of words, because it's like the languages that we use is sort of like it's like surface terminology that allows us to transcend that, because a lot of the surface language that we use in most languages, it kind of makes us stupid. It allows us to only see the surface of things, whereas when we understand that the surface words do have links that connect us to other words that also refer to that same word, for instance, but it allows more understanding of whatever thing that we're labeling. For instance, all the etymology around the word mun, right? How I mentioned before, like Amun Ra, money, monkey, monk, monopoly, monarchy, Monday, demon, all these mons, they're referring back to the earth. Because the moon, or the mono, the one, is the earth, right? And it is not the white mirror, Lun, in the night sky that goes through her lunations. But what I've actually kind of started to realize is that, because like typically we have this idea that the sun or the solar energy is like a masculine thing, right? Whereas the Lun is this feminine energy. But what I've found is that I'm not saying that it's one or the other, because it's both. The Lun has both masculine and feminine properties, and sun has feminine and masculine properties. They're archetypal, and that can express itself in people in many different ways. For instance, you can have a masculine woman, or a feminine man, a masculine man, or a feminine woman. And that part of their character shows them in which way that they're going to view sun and Lun. For people to say that it's Lun is feminine and sun is masculine, and that's all that it is, they're limiting their perception, because that's the whole essence of the spiritual math, I guess was what you could call it, that is so important, is that its facets and its factors are so infinite, and it can be viewed in so many different ways. The key to it is finding out your specific numbers, which is what the rest of this video is going to be about, because I want to kind of show people uh, the benefits or the purposes that can be gained by understanding the law of time and septenary gematria and the breath tech, etc., and what it leads to. But it's about finding out what is specific to you. And once you find out what's specific to you, you can hone in on that, right? And once you hone in on that, then you are essentially synchronizing with your greater plan, your greater story, your greater self, in a sense. Because there's just an infinite amount of ways of seeing this. Take, for instance, in the law of time, we don't call cycles of time calendars. I believe, and I say believe because I'm not entirely certain, but I think that the word calendar is a Latin word that goes back to keeping records of taxes. Again, I'm not sure. But either way, you know, I prefer a better term than calendar, whatever it may mean. And Jose Arguelles coined the term, and that is synchronometer. It's called, these cycles are called synchronometers because they are meters that measure synchronicity. And to me, it's just like, yeah, let's call it that because that makes so much more sense. That's another thing, is so many people are locked in to speaking how pretty much everybody else speaks, or how everybody else tells them they should speak. You know, it's like walking, talking, walking, you know, it's like why these words rhyme. It's because there's a significant truth that is contained within this rhyme. And that is, I noticed that whenever I walk the way that is expected of me in society, you know, it's like we all walk normally, if you will, like how everybody else like kind of tells us we should walk, and that's upright, you know, with your arms swinging side to side, and you got to stand up straight and look ahead, and that's how you're supposed to walk, you know what I mean? But I've noticed that sometimes I'm tired and I'm exhausted, and so like I'll kind of arch my back down, or like I'll like, it's just the way people move in general, you know. So many people are rigid robots in the way that they move, and in reality, it's like if you allow yourself to move freely, even if it looks silly, even if you feel like people are judging you, do it if it feels more comfortable. Like I've found that walking in silly, strange ways is actually easier on my body and my back, my front and my sides, you know what I mean? Like, and so it's the same with talking, you know. People speak in a way that they feel that they should conform to, you know, that they should speak this certain way or whatever. But people need to realize how fluid language is, because ultimately it's like going back to the astrology, because the seasonal map is typically focused in on the rebirth of the sun, which is on March 7th, not March 21st, by the way, because March 7th is the first day of the solar moon, the 9th moon. People think that because they say that on March 21st the sun rises in Aries, first degree of Aries, you know, or Aries or whatever, that people say that constellation up there, you know, that's Aries. And I've actually taken the time to look at it now, the constellation. Typically, you know, there's some like confusion on the internet. Again, like I said, I can't see it with all these city lights and this low topography being near Houston. But I mean, I looked up the constellation online, and typically there were two different renditions of Aries. There was like this simple one of this line, and then there was this slightly more complicated one with that same line, but then this bottom line, you know. And if people say the sun is rising in Aries up there, and they point to the constellation, right? They say that's Aries. Well, how do you know? You know what I mean? Like, because the sun, the point in time of the year that people say the sun is being reborn around March 21st, but in reality it's March 7th, that is in the solar moon. It's the first day of the solar moon. And one, that makes sense. Solar, right? But the solar moon resonates with Sagittarius, right? According to the sequence, I don't know if I've described it here. I've told a lot of people online through comments and stuff like that, but I don't know if I've reiterated it here. But the solar moon, the ninth moon, resonates with Sagittarius, or Sagittarius. 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 This is like, and I know there's some people that be like, it's pronounced Sagittarius, you know, and it's just like, no, it's pronounced Sagittarius, you know what I mean? And it's just like, you know what I mean? Like, what difference does it make? Like, who is the authority that said that? You know what I mean? There's a whole little, my understanding of the alphabet is now starting to expand because I'm allowing myself the fluidity of being a prophet, which has two meanings, to coin, which has two meanings, new terms and words. Give me a second. There's something that I need to do real quick, but I'll be right back. I don't know if you can see me doing this, but essentially I have to take my kratom, or my core atom, at a specific point. I have to time the dosage at a certain point, so I gotta do it now, but I'll just be like 2 minutes. So my point is like, what if the constellation that we know as Aries, right? Arise, Arius. It's like, what if its actual name is Sagittarius or whatever? You know what I mean? Like, what if when we point up to the sky and say that's Aries, what if that's actually its real name is Sagittarius? I mean, it kind of sounds like it at the end. Sagittarius. Sagittarius. You know what I mean? This is like, just because it's, you know, through conforming, it's collectively agreed upon that that's name is Aries. It's like, that doesn't make it so. You know what I mean? I can say that's Flupidablu. Nope. The sun is rising in Flupidablu. And they're like, what? It's Aries. I'd be like, no. Sorry, bro. It's Flupidablu now. In fact, it's always been Flupidablu. And you didn't know that? Fucking stupid idiot. I don't really care. But it's like, you know what I mean? And I've looked at both of the versions of Aries, right? And the other constellations, and it's just like, that line, you know, that goes like that, that's supposedly Aries, even if it has that bottom line, yeah, it could be depicted as a ram, but it can be depicted as a lot of things. You know what I mean? It can be depicted, like, you could put together the dots or put a shape. It's like, you know what I mean? You could put a shape over that and be like, oh my god, it's the television constellation. You know what I mean? Or, oh, it's the tree constellation. You know what I mean? Like, it's ridiculous that people just assume and claim to know that those two lines are a fucking ram. Like, and that's that. You know what I mean? Like, it's ridiculous. It can be interpreted in so many different ways. And its name could be anything. Like, come on. yeah, you know, people can make a lot of connections as to, you know, the symbolism and going back to, you know, the ram being a fiery, you know, cardinal energy and all this, but it's just like, what if it is a ram, but what if its name is Sagittarius? You know what I mean? I've not heard anybody give an explanation as to the etymology of Sagittarius. And it's like, if you look at the glyph of Sagittarius, it's an arrow, right? Because they say Sagittarius is the archer. It's like it's an arrow that points up to the right, pointing up like northeast, right? So it's like, if people say that the ram is the right ascension of meridian, right? Right ascension of meridian, it's pointing up, ascending to the right. You know, and it's just like, what if that's referencing the sun making its ascent over the meridian? But either way, I'm just saying, I'm trying to like just remind people just to be more fluid and flexible about this stuff, because again, going back to the Tao, what we know compared to the all is essentially nothing. We can know one thing at a time, but we'll never know everything all of the time. But never say never, right? I'm just trying to fulfill whatever purpose the Tao is aligning with me. But I guess that brings me to the remainder of this video, which is, I wanted to show people my personal synchronizations. I wanted to share with people significant numbers and aspects about, you know, my numbers. Or I guess like my galactic signature, the septenary gematria equivalent of my name, my kin name, harmonic number, oracle, you know, my oracle kin, the sum of all my oracle kin, etc., etc., my kin code, my wave spell code, and kind of give people an idea of what to look for. Because there was something that, yeah, like I said in the past, there was a service that I was going to provide, but you know, as much as I, you know, would love to, the idea or the image of being a specialist in a field that can provide a service that nobody else can, because then it'll make me feel unique and special, you know what I mean? As much as I, you know, it's like, I'm gonna die eventually, so it's like, how much time do I have in life? You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't want to spend all that time doing something that I could just teach others how to do, and then they can do it for themselves. I guess the reason why I figured I would do that is just to feel like I would have something that people would want to give back for. But you know what I mean? It's just like, no, I think it's better to just show people how to do it themselves, because then that'll allow everybody to be able to understand it, and I feel like people are going to eventually help support me in the future anyways. Because there's so much work to be done. There's so much to uncover. You know, I don't want to be spending all this time doing something that other people can do for themselves when I could be doing it to experience life, or, you know, to be figuring out other stuff. You know what I mean? Deeper stuff. But I have a rudimentary revision paper here. Yeah, the sun, it's blinding it, but this is like a revised version of all the information. I have it, most of it spread out through different notebooks, and I don't want to go looking through them all, or I didn't earlier, you know, so I just kind of have the revision copy here. But it doesn't have everything that I want it to have in there, but that's okay. We'll just kind of go over some of it because we only have about maybe 20 more minutes. So that constitutes this video, you know, partly a breath tech video and partly a vlog. And then later on in other videos, we'll get more into the G and the Z breaths. Level 2 will be about the wave breaths, and it's like rhythm, you know, and utilizing different depths and speeds in order to get more out of the breath without having to do so much breathing, as well as mastering the process of the 4 modes of breathing in, breathing out, and holding out. And once you kind of get that down, and you practice that a lot, and you get to the point where you can fully breathe in and out, and, you know, have the best breathing in and of itself, like the act of breathing, once you get that, you know, that honed in on and refined, etc., then you can then I'll make videos regarding the remainder of my knowledge regarding this stuff. And once I get to a point where it's like, well, I've said everything that I know, then we'll just leave it at that, and I'll direct people to some of Core Love's information and stuff, so they can go and learn from him, because he knows way more about it than I do. I can just share what I know. So beginning, I guess, with my synchronizations. To begin, of the 260 kin Zulkin, I'm kin 96. Kin 96 is part of the Yellow Human wave spell, which is the 8th wave spell, and the I fit into the 5th tone of position of that wave spell, which is Yellow Overtone Warrior, or 5 Warrior, kin 96. That number is very significant in my life, and it will be until this life is over. And who knows, maybe in the next life I'll have the opportunity to understand these mathematics again, so I can know my next galactic signature, whatever that may be. And hopefully, if I'm able to remember this life, then I can understand the process of how, when souls die and reincarnate, how their kins jump. You know, like the sequence in which the kins go through their various lives. But who knows? I don't even know if that'll happen. So, the Yellow Human wave spell is all about the life of a human. It's all about experiencing the human life to its fullest. And like I mentioned before, the dichotomy between the Skywalker and the human, 12 and 13, and why, you know, about the transcendence from the 12 to the 13. The 13 represents, the 12 represents the human life in its normal mode, you know, just working in the garden, spending time with friends and family, cooking, you know, learning the arts, and, you know, traveling, and just enjoying the human existence, right? The purpose of being a human. Which comes down to choice and free will, and developing a wisdom based upon the choices that we make through our free will. But the 13 represents the enlightened human, the human that essentially awakens to this science of sacred mathematics and sacred knowledge, etc. in general. But I am a part of the Yellow Human wave spell, so my goal is to liberate people from the confines of this prison planet and help them to get all the opportunities that they deserve in life, and that is to have a home, a good, decent home, that shields them from the elements, so they don't have to be homeless, to help to provide people with food that they all deserve, you know. And I'm vegan, so that's fruits and vegetables, herbs, and, you know, plants in general, and even fungi. But and to just give, you know, to help the world in a way that allows everybody to have a good life, and for everybody to be able to have a guitar if they want one, to help people to have transportation if they want to go somewhere, or you know, etc. Like, there's so many things that could be fixed in this world in a way that is possible without, you know, going against what so many people say is impossible. I don't want to get into that, but so um, I'm 5 warrior, so I hold the overtone position of that wave spell. I'm not going to tell you my full name, but in septenary gematria, if you're interested in understanding the cipher of the septonary gematria, you can check out Marty Leeds on YouTube, like I've said before, the Gnostic Church and Academy of Lord Jesus Christ here on YouTube, and you can learn more about the gematria cipher. But my name equals, the sum of my name is 60, right? My first name being 31, my middle name being 11, and my last name being 18. So add those up together, you get 60. Now, within my oracle, my analog or my support is Kin 83, Blue Overtone Knight. My guide is Kin 44, Yellow Overtone Seed. My antipode is White Overtone Worldbridger, Kin 226. And my occult is Kin 165, Red Solar Serpent. Now, what's interesting is that if you were to look at, there's the septonary gematria, right, where it's A through M and N through Z, and then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you know? But you can also look at the base English cipher, which is A equals 1, B equals 2, all the way up to Y equals 25 and Z equals 26. Now, if I were to look at my name with that cipher, hang on, give me a second. Yeah, if I were to use that cipher, the sum of my name is 165. So, the sum of my name, my full name, first, middle, last, within the base English cipher of gematria equals 165. And again, like I said, the occult kin of my galactic signature, Yellow Overtone Warrior, Kin 96, is Kin 165, Red Solar Serpent. So my name is pointing my awareness to my occult power, or which is Red Solar Serpent or Red Solar River. Red Solar Blood, in a sense, you know. But what's also interesting is that if you take the 60 of the septonary gematria sum of my name and 165 of the base gematria, or English gematria cipher, and you find the difference between them, essentially subtracting 60 from 165, you get the sum of 105. So the difference between my name and both ciphers is 105. And 105 is also interesting because that's Red Magnetic Serpent, which begins the Red Serpent wave spell in the Blue Castle. It's the first wave spell in the Blue Castle. And what's also interesting is that the septonary gematria sum of the words Red Magnetic Serpent sum to 76. Now 76 is important because my kin name, Yellow Overtone Warrior, sums to 76. So the sum of my galactic signature's name, the kin name, sums to 76, and the difference between my name and both of those ciphers I mentioned is 105, and Kin 105 is Red Magnetic Serpent, and the words Red Magnetic Serpent equals 76. Coincidence? I don't think so. That's up to you. And 105 is really important when it comes to the law of time because of how many times it shows itself, how many times it pops up. But I'm not going to go too deep into that. But what's interesting about Kin 76 is that its name in septonary gematria is, for Kin 76 is yellow spectral warrior. And since the word spectral equals 32 and overtone equals 32, both of them sum to 32, because of that, my kin's name, 96 of yellow overtone warrior, points back to the previous warrior before it, because it's going through the solar seals. It goes in sequences of 20, or the vinyl, and because of that, it's the previous warrior. It's the warrior that comes before me, right? Because of that, it's pointing my awareness to the warrior that came before me, right? Which is Kin 76. And because spectral and overtone both equal 32, then that means the words yellow spectral warrior equals 76. I think I've mentioned this in a previous video, but essentially it's one of two kin that if you include the tone, the seal, and the color, you know, it's like the color system in my opinion, because I've decoded all of the numbers of all the kin's names, including the color, and I just started not too long ago on decoding or deciphering the just the tone and the seal. So instead of yellow overtone warrior, it's just overtone warrior, you know, and do that for all the kin's names. But yellow spectral warrior sums to 76, and it's one of two that do that. The other one being Kin 52. So it's significant. It's pointing me back to this number 76 as well as Kin 76, because it keeps popping up in my correlations between septonary gematria and the law of time. Now, what's interesting is that if you look at the words for the numbers, you'll find some very significant knowledge, but the only one that I'm going to point out right now is the word 12. 12 in septonary gematria sums to 28. Now, why is that significant? Well, remember me talking about 13 moons and how 12 of them relate to the auxiliary or the ox moons, or the ox body, right, of the Hob, and that central 7th moon stands apart from the other 12. Well, if you multiply 12 by 28 for 12 moons, right, differentiating the 12 from that central 7th, right, you get 336. 12 times 28 is 336. And 336 is important because I mentioned this in a previous video, but if you keep seeing a number in your life that is higher than the number 260, and you want to find out which kin it's pointing to, which is a super important facet of this, just subtract multiples of 260 until you get to a number between 1 and 260. And then you'll know the kin. So for instance, if you kept getting the number 261, well, then you know that it's pointing to Kin 1, because if you subtract 260, you get 1. It's essentially saying that once you get to 260 and you go to 261, it's like the first kin of a second Zolkin. You see what I'm saying? Like the Zolkin after that. So the first Zolkin would be 1 to 260, the second Zolkin would be 261 to 520, and then the third would be 521 to 780, etc. So anytime you get a number higher than 260 and you want to find out its kin equivalent, again, just subtract multiples of 260 until you get to a number between 1 and 260. And again, going back to how the word 12 in septonary gematria sums to 28, referring back to the auxiliary moons or the ox body, then what you'll notice is that 12 times 28 is 336, and 336 is 260 plus 76. So the numbers of my kin's name and how 105 relates back to 76 through its septonary gematria of its kin name, and that being the difference between my name in both ciphers, 76 is very important. So this 336 days, these nums of the 365 13 moon cycle, it's, or 364 plus the day out of time, it's pointing back to reconstructing that. It's telling me that that's important, right? And again, you know, this goes back to the 12 system of, you know, like the 12 months and the zodiac. It's telling me that essentially part of my process and part of my purpose is to resynchronize the system of 12 with the 13th in the center, or the 7th in the center of the 13, right? Synchronizing all the different mathematics and structures of the number 12 back into the law of time. That's what my numbers are pointing back to. Another interesting thing is that if you look at the number 616, this will be the last thing I mention because I got to get started to get ready for work, but if you look at the number 616, if you subtract two multiples of 260, which is 520, if you subtract two Zulkins from 616, you get 96. So the number 616 is encoding kin 96 as its kin equivalent. So 616 is significant because, remember me talking about the ox body, the ox matrix, the auxiliary moons, the 12 and the central 1? Well, you can think of the 12 and the 1 in the center as 6. The first 6, the 1 in the center, and the next 6. And the 6 on both sides make up the 12, and the 1 in the center makes that 1. So 616, 616. Again, my numbers are pointing back to that. And it's like, I don't know if I mentioned this. I mentioned this on the Syncretism Society podcast, but PlayStation controllers call their joysticks the 6-axis, right? And the reason being is because it helps you to move through the third dimensional space within a video game, right? Because the 6-axis is up, down, forward, reverse, right, and left. And those 6 directions are the 6 directions of three-dimensional space, right? It's the 6-axis. Plus, the fact that 6-axis is a palindrome, as well as, you know, the axis is encoding the 6 backwards, right? You have 6A, XIS. So 6A, and then XIS, which is another 6. And what is that A but 1? It's the first letter. In both ciphers, right? The septonary and the basic English cipher. A represents the number 1. And so 6-axis is saying 616. So it just shows you the importance of all these things. And how these synchronizations will just come to you. You don't really have to strain so hard. You don't have to try and force it. Just open yourself up to divinity and be patient with yourself and tolerant of yourself. And eventually you'll learn to love and respect yourself and understand yourself, right? And then you can fill your slot and do what you're here to do, right? Because once you realize that there's really nothing else you can either be selfless and and just open yourself up to whatever the world wants you to be, which cannot always be good. And if you don't do that, you fall back into being yourself. So it's like you got one of those options. Or you can try and emulate another person, but again, that's just going back to whatever somebody else wants you to be, right? So you can either be selfless or self-full, right? But either way, eventually you'll learn to be yourself. But I only kind of like mention a couple of things regarding my number map, but or my Synx, but there's a lot more to it, trust me. I just kind of wanted to mention one of the most important ones. So I hope this video is helpful. Again, I'm never really sure the impact I'm making. I just feel like I'm doing little bit by little bit, and again, that it's happening as it's supposed to, you know. But yeah, everybody have a good day. I gotta get ready for work, so yeah, y'all have a good one.